We're here at Willard School, and we're doing a lesson called The Math Things Mingle.
You know, I thought it was pretty unusual type of lesson. I thought it was unusual that there were all these people here, and it included a lot of elements that were unusual. We were in, you know, they got into this sort of random grouping, which they've done before, but so that was unusual. The huddle at the beginning was slightly unusual to have all the kids up at the board at the same time. So there were all these unusual moments thrown into one lesson. You know, it was it was very long. It was sort of very, you know, we pushed through. Didn't have a lot of, except for the beginning. Once they got in their groups, they were in their groups. So I think there were issues that came up as sort of a lesson, but as a research lesson, I thought it was really interesting in terms of what it surfaced about how kids were thinking. I think we got to a lot of the sort of questions about variables and equations, and you know, a lot of kids were saying those are equations because you can solve them. Those are equations because you can solve them. That whole idea, like they were bringing up sort of the language, and their understanding of it, I think, was coming through how they were talking about it. And I don't know how much of that kind of I steered, but how much just came up. I think I was doing a lot of steering. They were noticing some of the sort of finer level distinctions. They were pulling apart, you know, the property equations. They were mixing up equations and expressions. They were doing all this stuff, and I didn't know how we were going to get to that first stage that I wanted to get to. And then it kind of came clear, at least to me, and I don't know how much I forced that or how much they kind of brought that up. So I'd love to hear from people, you know, whether it seemed like, you know, their ideas, whether we constructed the ideas out of their ideas, or whether I kind of just shaped it, you know, and disregarded. You know, was it built on their ideas or was it not? And I can't replay it well enough to figure that out right now. I do think, you know, I did a lot of kind of directing when I was going around to the groups, and it seemed like their discussions were good when I was standing there, and I'm eager to hear sort of how those discussions were when I wasn't there. And the standard kind of start for me was to come and ask them, you know, how they were sorting things, and to hear, you know, what they had said, and then to say, so why is that important? You know, why do you think it'd be important for a seventh grader to know that? And then if they were off track, to say, so, you know, to pick one of them and to say, so if this were on a test, what would the instructions be? And Allison, you came up with that in our planning meetings as a sort of prompt that might, you know, redirect their discussions if they were off track. And I thought it worked really well in terms of getting them to focus on the things that I wanted them to focus on. Although that goes back to, you know, how much of this lesson was about teaching them what to focus on versus just seeing what they did focus on. So in retrospect, I don't know if I did too much kind of driving, or if that allowed their discussions to go deeper, and they kind of got, you know, we learned more about what they understand as a result of it. I thought for the most part their group discussions were pretty good in terms of keeping people engaged. There were people in each group that kind of took on a leadership role. I think this group had a hard time staying focused, but kind of, you know, in terms of how some of the students do on a normal day, they were very engaged, and I think got something out of it. So I was really proud of everybody in here. What evidence is there that students are able to see these simple strings as more than just collections of letters, numbers, and operations? I think that evolved. I think it really did evolve through the lesson, that they kind of started seeing things and pulling them out and having discussions about those and the meaning. And I love the y equals 2. You know, that group over there was convinced it was another thing. It didn't fit. And they were talking about that. You know, it's different. It is an answer. The whole idea of answer. The misconceptions that come up, I don't know if they're misconceptions, but the you know, that they've been trained to think of everything on the right side of the equal sign or the right side of the inequality as the answer. And that whole idea I think came up in a lot of groups that, I didn't know that equations didn't have numbers on the right side. I learned that equations could have variables on the right side. The language that Zoe was using about an equation being an equal sign and two values, values being kind of not well defined for her, and that. The second question, what evidence is there that students are developing an understanding of the attributes and features of the symbol strings which will be utilized in 8th grade algebra? I think we wrote it deliberately kind of vague, or how will these things be utilized in 8th grade algebra? We're still trying to figure that out, and I think a lot of our work this year has been trying to figure out, so how does what we teach in 6th grade and 7th grade get used in 8th grade? Because the things we have been teaching over the years don't seem to be the things that give kids success in 8th grade algebra. So, of these things, to me it's not that they know when you have 3 plus 2n equals 8, one of those equations, that you first subtract 3 from both sides and then you divide by 2. It's more than that, the things that will be utilized in 8th grade algebra. So, but I don't know what exactly more. But I do think, they started talking about these things in more sort of in richer ways than just you do this and then you do this. So I think there was evidence that we're moving them to kind of see these things and how they're connected.